teach engineering at USI. I did all of my schooling at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign for many years. There was a T-shirt that I saw for sale when I was getting ready to graduate for the last time that said "College, the best 12 years of my life," and I thought, wow, it was 14 for me. So, so I'm a professional student, and now I'm a professional educator. So that's the best job I could ever hope for. I guess today I'm representing all four of the STEM. Of the S, T, E, A, and M. I'm better with E, obviously, because that's what I do, but I'm going to try to, in the first part of this, I'm going to try to do a little bit more of that. I'm calling my thing the engineering design, the creativity of constraints. So creativity is creation of something, right? And the 20 by 20 format was already talked about. Design is open-ended. So we heard about open-endedness. And it always takes place within constraints. You always have some sort of rules, as you were mentioning earlier, that you have to, and in my world, sometimes those rules are unbreakable because we hit up against physical laws, like universal rules. This is Leonardo, right? Leonardo da Vinci. He was a true Renaissance man, right? Inventor, artist, scientist, and engineer. And in a show you don't tell you sort of way, these are a couple of his pictures. He did some inventions, he did some design, he did some creation, innovation. This one's a helicopter. It would have worked better if air was a little more viscous. I'm going to be biased. I'm a fluids person, so most of my references are fluid mechanic related. This is the water wheel, again fluids and some energy transfer. So that's a very useful thing. He also was an artist. This one is called Virgin of the Rocks. This is the version that's at the Louvre. He painted this in 1486, but I put it up here. You can't see it because the lights aren't right. But in the background, this is the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's the Christ Child. There's an angel, and that's supposed to be John the Baptist. But in the background, there's geological formations that are scientifically accurate. So Leonardo was a student of science, and he represented that even in his art, right? And the prototypical anatomy pictures are even better. Now, the original commission of this painting, he painted it for a church. It went for like 800 lira, so art even back then wasn't the way to get astoundingly wealthy, even if you were Leonardo. And he had some dispute with the folks to pay him. So, the coloring, the content, the gilding on the edges were all constrained. They were all specified in the contract that he was to do these things. So creativity happens within these constraints. That's my scope. Let's go back a little further than Leonardo. This is an introduction to STEM, perhaps. These represent the 7 liberal arts of the medieval universities. Liberal, Libra means free, so this was the education that served to train the free man, right, as opposed to a slave. That's where the free meant. The three, they were divided into 2 groups. Language studies were grammar, rhetoric, and logic. And I think they're on this side, starting at the top, grammar and logic. And then the mathematical physical were arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. Okay. The structure, as such, appeared in the medieval universities when universities really started, but it predates that Greek and Roman, Oriental. This development, Pythagoras, Plato, Marcius Capella, and St. Augustine. All helped develop this structure. And let me just, well, I can't figure out which one's which. Arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy are 3 out of the 7 are what would be considered STEM fields. So this push for STEM education isn't something that's 21st century, right? This is 13th century stuff. Okay, now, astronomy represents science. And also, included in astronomy was also astrology, so it's a pseudoscience, but it was as close to science as they got. I found something else from the 13th century, and this talks to what you were saying, is that the sciences were given a hierarchy. Okay, arithmetic and geometry proceed from principles known by the natural light of intelligence. The advanced sciences proceed from principles established by other sciences. So perspective proceeds from geometric principles, and music proceeds from principles established by arithmetic. Okay, the Greeks thought that music was mystical because it was a geometric or an arithmetic progression. Engineering. Engineering goes back a long way too. This is even further. This is 2630 BC. This guy was Imhotep. He was the architect that designed this pyramid. It was the burial site of the pharaoh Zoser. If you've got, my oldest is 10. He's big into the Kane Chronicles. Pharaoh Zoser was not mentioned in the Kane Chronicles, so sorry. The bit of connection isn't there. He's fascinated by Egypt, and he's also into the rest of those sorts of things. He did more than just design this. He built an encyclopedia. He wrote an encyclopedia of architecture that was used for like the next 1,000 years by Egyptian builders. So this was an early architect and engineer of 4,000 years before our time. The creative process. This is more modern engineering marvels. Starting on this side. Hero of Alexandria in about 200 BC. This was the original form of steam. He was boiling water to create motion. So this touches on again fluid mechanics, but the first law of thermodynamics, right? Converting energy to heat. Converting heat to work. Okay, this was one of the early things to do. Above that is the Pont du Gard aqueduct bridge in southern France, built about 19 BC. Okay, the Romans built this to bring water to their baths in somewhere. I've got it here, but the bridge is 900 feet across, and the difference in elevation between one side to the other, so that the water doesn't go too fast, is 1 inch.
Oh my.
Okay, so that's a construction marvel of 19 BC, right? This was, and I mean, it's not small. They had to get stuff up to the top. Okay. Up here, actually, I'm not going in. No, this is in chronological order. A Persian windmill. It's a little hard to see from the side, but these guys, this rotates. This is where you grind grain, and this part wind blows through. So there's a shield on one side so that it blows in one direction. So this was a windmill, 10th century AD, Persia, and then of course the Apollo moon landing. Engineering design, engineering creativity, typically begins with a need, a want, or an opportunity. Okay, that's what we're looking for. In all of these cases, we see either a need or a want. Now, maybe the Roman baths aren't strictly a need, but they would be a want. Maybe the moon landing isn't strictly a need, but a want. You know, I don't know. We needed to beat the Russians, but that was maybe a want more than a need. I don't know. So that, and it ends with a product, a process, or a system. So there's always an end in mind. Okay. This is the slide representing science. She represents the prototypical picture of a scientist. I've never done that outside of a chemistry class, but I have colleagues that do. Right? You get dressed up like a scientist, and you do science. Physics. Right, this is the prototypical structure of physics. You know, the Newtonian physics. Let me clarify, because this is a picture of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, which is the standard model of physics, the one that most recently looks like they found the Higgs boson, which was the missing part of the standard model. So this is cutting edge science. So it goes all the way back. So this science uses observation of the natural world to test hypotheses. Okay, and hypotheses are important because you've got to come up with them. You've got all these things, you're seeing all these things, and you say, well, why does it do that? Why do things? Why does an apple fall out of an apple tree, right? I don't know if that's canon or not, but why does an apple fall out of an apple tree? You've got to come up with this hypothesis of why things work. And that involves creativity. Okay, it has to. So there's that. Science comes from the Latin scientia, which means knowledge. Okay, so in the medieval ages, science was addressing, there were all sorts of sciences, right? The science of philosophy, science of metaphysics. It meant knowledge. All right, mathematics comes from the Greek, mathema, which also means knowledge, study or learning. Aristotle defined math as the science of quantity. Okay, modern mathematicians don't actually agree on an accepted definition. They don't always. You get 3 mathematicians in the room, you'll have 4 opinions expressed. The photographs here. This one's Euclid's Euclid's proof of the Pythagorean theorem, right? Geometrically, the squares of the sides of the triangle on hypotenuse. This one is a Lorentz attractor. I just jumped straight into the 1960s for this one because Lorentz was a weatherman, and the nonlinear dynamics in again, fluid mechanic solutions in the atmospheric flow was what led him to chaos theory. You recognize this one as a Mandelbrot set. It has to do with constraints. The mathematical description of this set is incredibly simple. It's just a recursively defined function, and members of this numbers on the complex plane are members of the set if the sequence doesn't diverge. Okay, so it's an incredibly simple explanation that creates this massive amounts of complexity, but self-repeating complexity. Okay, mathematics is useful now. Folks, the Lorentz, Pythagoras, they had again to come up with these things. It's not just something that you stumble across. It's not something that it initially proves, right? It doesn't initially prove itself. You have to come up with it and then prove it after the fact. So it's a form of creativity. Mathematics is useful to us because it's incredibly useful to represent the real world. Okay, this is a logarithmic spiral. It looks a little bit like the spiral of learning that's on the cover of this book, right? But it also appears in self-similar ways in other instances of nature. Okay, so that's where our oh, I wanted to say that it's called the Spira Mirabilis, the miraculous spiral by Jacob Bernoulli. Not the same fluid mechanics Bernoulli, but his uncle. All right, so engineering. We did a little bit of entomology, right? Engineering comes from English, one who operates an engine. Okay, engineers are people who operate engines, but we don't mean engines like the Hogwarts Express. We mean engines like war engines. Is how the word really came. The word engine comes from the Latin ingenium, right, meaning ability or ingenuity. So something you've done. And technology, the T in STEM, also echoes these engineering principles. So that's kind of an overview of engineering. Engineering, the need is to get across a thing of water, right? You can do it in lots of different ways. You can do it in a way that will risk your life and the life of your fellow travelers. This is a bridge in Pakistan. You can do it in an artistic way. This is a picture my brother took. That's my brother. That's my cousin. My brother lives in San Francisco. This is the Japanese garden in San Francisco. Golden Gate Bridge, also in San Francisco, but that picture's from Wikipedia. And you can do it in a way that's very functional, but not necessarily aesthetically pleasing. All right? I mean, railway bridges aren't ugly, but they're not really what you'd call the top of their art, the way that Golden Gate Bridge. You don't see a railway bridge on refrigerator magnets. In the same vein, architects create blueprints. This is a blueprint of a Habitat for Humanity house that my student did. Was studying. He didn't do the house, but he was working with them to do an energy analysis for Habitat to see if their houses that they're building are the best cost savings for their clients. And that one's falling water. So the level of creativity, as it would be, is the level of artistic creativity is a wide spectrum, but the creative work, this still fulfills the needs of creative work in my work. What doesn't fulfill the needs of creative engineering design is Rube Goldberg. Everybody thinks of creativity and engineering as Rube Goldberg. In reality, this is the most inefficient way to open a garage door that you could come up with. Okay, but it's clever. Aesthetics can be a constraint. Okay, this on the left is the 1960s futuristic view of communication. On the right is the 2000s view of modern communication, right? The flip phone. And the aesthetics of Motorola in doing that is because when they were growing up, they were watching Captain Kirk, right? And he'd pull the communicator out and flip it open. That was the way you talked to people, right? I had a friend that worked for Motorola. They had one of the earliest embedded antennas in their phone. It was perfect. It worked perfectly. They couldn't sell it because people thought cell phones needed an antenna sticking up the top. So they stuck a piece of plastic on the top that looked like an antenna and it sold. Okay, so aesthetics is sometimes a constraint. Okay, so it's not that the constraints are only what works. Functionality is one of the constraints, perhaps the biggest constraint. A little bit about me. As I said, I'm a fluids mechanics person. This is my test facility. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It is held together with electrical tape over there to hold the insulation on. This is a refrigerant, a channel that holds refrigerant. This is a high-speed shot of bubbles flowing through that channel. We're trying to reduce the amount of pressure, or at least characterize the amount of pressure that's needed in a refrigeration system, an air conditioning system. And we haven't had good models done of half a millimeter tubes. Right, so that's what I did my work on. I had a student that helped me with this. We're presenting some of this in November. This is a picture some of my students took in a class I teach with Dr. Mitchell. Energy systems and sustainable design. Right, design according to principles of sustainability. This is an infrared camera image that they took of a wall that's going to the outside. They took it last November, right after Thanksgiving. These visible cold spots are the studs. So the insulation wasn't sufficient. Okay, so we had them looking at the design of our building. To what was the skylight also loses heat, but we all knew that. I'm also doing some work with biomechanics. This is you can't see him. This is a little butterfly. I think it's a spring azure. We're looking at the false head hypothesis, the part that the big spots on the back and the little wiggly thing that make the bird try to bite the back instead of the front, so the butterfly can fly away. It's more like biological design. We're trying to understand it, not necessarily recreate it, but it could come back. There's folks looking at butterflies more like dragonflies to create little tiny flying things, micro flying vehicles. This is another one where aesthetics maybe is in the eye of the beholder. This is a proposed fusion reactor, not cold fusion, really hot fusion. And the fusion takes place in here, and this is the cooling side. And I'm actually working to design a test facility for using carbon dioxide, supercritical carbon dioxide, to flow down the walls. Well, no, sorry, liquid metal is flowing down the walls because it erodes quickly. And so we're using supercritical carbon dioxide to wick the heat away from the metal, so that we can sustain this hopefully next generation of clean energy, or cleaner energy. This is a picture that my student brought back. He went on a mission trip actually to Myanmar, Burma, formerly known as Burma, and they installed a water tower with filtration because in the third world, in the first world, we're worried about how to charge our iPhones and create more electricity to do that. In the third world, they're trying to get clean water to drink. Okay, so the engineering, the spectrum of design, the constraints are widely spread out. So in another show you don't tell you sort of way, what we're going to do, if you want to come to my session, and actually I said that 12, I thought about more, we could probably take 16, because I could just then have 4 groups of 4. But anyway, let's start with 12.
I think it's fine to balance it with 12.
Okay. But in groups, we're going to build a rocket using materials that I got for less than 20 bucks at Target, and a handful of straws that I grabbed from Starbucks. Also at Target. But so that's what we're going to do, and you're going to experience this design concept.